Hello, Lovelace. Welcome to today's English lesson, continuing our work on biographies and looking at our model text, the biography of Christopher Marlowe. Today, we're going to focus on the grammar features. We're going to continue and complete our writer's toolkit that will help us to build biographies in the future. So, there's the first page of our biography. Remember Christopher Marlowe, circa 1564 to 1593. So it tells us approximately when he was born and when he died. First of all, all biographies are written in the third person. He, she, they, his, her, and so on. Okay, we're talking about somebody else. We could only use I, we could only write in the first person, I, me, if it was an autobiography. But this is a biography about a different person. So we use the third person. We talk about he, she, they, and so on. Okay. So the whole thing should be in the third person. Wherever possible, we need to use specific dates. This ties everything together. It allows the reader to understand the chronology of how and when things happen. Okay. So in this case, he was born in Canterbury around February 16th, 1564. We've explained in the text that this was actually the day he was baptized, he was christened. So we can't be 100% sure of his actual birth date, but we've said around. We've identified that it is an approximation. But we have put some dates in there. We've just given that key bit of information. So wherever possible, in the biographies you write, try and put particular dates in. As you might not be surprised, this should be all written in the past tense. We are reflecting on events that have happened. We are talking about the life of someone. Whether they're dead or alive, it doesn't matter. These are still events that have happened in their lives. So all your writing, everything in a biography should be in the past tense. The only exception might be if the person is still living and you want to do a final paragraph that talks about what they hope to do in the future. But generally speaking, biographies are written in the past tense, especially if the person is no longer with us. Okay? The third person, past tense, and using dates where possible. It's always good to add extra bits of information. Okay? Parenthesis. We've talked about this before. This was a feature of our toolkits in the previous topic. So adding information, one way to do that is between commas. Okay. So the nature of Marlowe's service to England was not specified by the council, comma, but the letter sent to Cambridge has provoked abundant speculation. Notably that the theory that Marlowe had become a secret agent working for Sir Francis Walshingham's intelligence service. So that little bit in the middle between the commas, we could leave out. It would still make sense, but it just adds that extra information. Okay, so commas is one way to add a parenthesis to add extra information to our writing. Use of time connectives. So starting a paragraph with a time connective to show the passing of time, in this case, after 1587. So the reader now knows we've moved forward in Marlowe's life and it's now after 1587. And then another look at use of parenthesis is brackets. Again, another way of adding extra information. So in this case, after 1587, Marlowe was in London, writing for the theatre, and probably also engaging himself in occasional government service. So it's just that extra bit. We're not sure. We've said probably, possibly, speculated, and so on. We've used a lot of these words during the biography, especially about his spy, the rumours of him being a spy. But the brackets allow you just to put in that extra bit of information. So another way of adding a parenthesis. There is a third way. Can you remember what it was? Yeah, it was the use of the hyphen, little dashes. So commas, dashes, or brackets are ways of adding extra information. The colon, those two dots, we put a colon at the end of a sentence just as it leads into a list. Okay, so in this case, Elizabethan theatre was split into 3 genres. So we're going to say the 3 things. We've got a list: history, tragedy, and comedy. Okay, so the colon introduces the list. Within that list, remember to use your commas. The only time we don't have the comma is just before the last entry of the list. So we've got history, comma, tragedy, and comedy. Okay, so a comma between every item in the list except the last 2. Then we just use an and. The semicolon, which is the dot and comma, that's to separate extended articles in a list. So if it's short phrases within the list, as opposed to single words or short phrases, then we would use a semicolon. Okay, so basically these replace the commas. So his history is included, and we've got the colon there to introduce the list, but then the semicolon separates each item because each item is quite long. It included Dido, which is that's a short one, so just a comma there. Dido, Queen of Carthage, semicolon. Edward II, semicolon. Hero and Leander and Tamburlaine the Great. Again, an and for the last 2, not semicolon. But the semicolon is just an extended comma. Because each item is that bit longer, a bit wordier, then we're just giving the reader a little bit more of a break to recognize the separation, to recognize where each of these titles starts and ends. Okay. Fronted adverbials. Now we use these to tell the reader where, when, how, or the order something has happened. In this case, despite the gravity of the charge, he was not jailed or tortured, but released. So this is a how statement. So despite the gravity of the charge, he was not jailed. Okay. So it's that extra bit of setting the scene for the reader, explaining. We can't just say, well, we can just say he was not jailed or tortured, but we're just adding that extra bit of information, despite the gravity of the charge. So we're just highlighting, in this case, that in those days, heresy or atheism was punishable by death. This was a serious charge. And despite that, he wasn't jailed or tortured, but was released. So there was he definitely had some sort of clout, some sort of power over government or over the royal family to allow himself to be released on this incredibly serious charge. Okay? But anyway, the fronted adverbial, in this case, the how, despite the gravity of the charge. Another fronted adverbial tells about the when. So in this case, on May 30th, however, Marlowe was killed. So we've started this sentence with a time adverbial. A reminder, if something is owned by someone, we use an apostrophe, so apostrophe S. In this case, Marlowe's literary importance. So Marlowe is his name. The apostrophe S indicates that it is owned, it belongs to him. And then the whole thing should be formal language. This is not a conversation between 2 friends. This is not an informal thank you letter at Christmas. This is a formal piece of documentation. This is a reflection of someone's life. This is a record of events through their life and should be written in correct English. So not full of abbreviations and slang and codes and say all sorts of or chatty language. It should be formal language. It should be correct English, reflecting and respecting the person's life. Okay. So a reminder of our toolkit so far. Yesterday, we talked about the actual format, the structure of our biography, starting with the title, who the biography is about, and then including dates, when that person lived, whether they're still alive or whether we've got a death date to add into that. So the title, the person we're writing about, and their dates. The introduction, that opening paragraph that gives a little summary of some of the key events during that person's life. Then we move on to their early life. We start to write chronologically now, in time order, starting from their youngest times of life, place of birth, time of birth, immediate family, who they lived with, and so on, where they lived, maybe early schooling. Okay. Any interesting events that sort of steered that early part of their life, where they lived, where they were able to access education, uh, maybe something that happened with parents that caused their life to change direction. So those sorts of things. Maintaining that chronological order, working through in the order it happened. Important life events. So these are things maybe at the end of their education, what steered the direction their life took. Linking to careers. So what was it that steered them towards a particular job or type of a way of earning money? Then the career itself. So the working life. What did they do? Was it what they became famous for? Or did they have a job on the side whilst they were doing whatever it was that made them famous? Events that changed their life. Okay, so at any stage during their life, anything that changed its direction, made them more recognized, made them change their ideas as regards the work they did, whatever it is. Then the end of life. What events took place that led to the end of this person's life, if they have reached the end of their life? Obviously, if you're writing a biography of someone who's still alive, then we don't do that bit. And then finally, that little extra bit at the end. Those little bits of information that maybe didn't fit quite well into the rest of the biography. You can slot them in, create a paragraph at the end, any additional information, why they were famous, if they were. So anything you want to add in that you've not been able to slot into the rest of your biography. And then today, the grammar, a reminder that we write in the third person. I'm going to move over here so I'm out of the way. Write in the third person, he, she, they. The use of specific dates, if possible. So if you know when things happened, try and include that in the biography. Always writing in the past tense. These are events that have happened to this person. So we need to reflect on them and write in the past tense. Any additional information can go between two commas. Use of time connectives. Starting paragraphs with time connectives to show how time has moved on since the previous events. The use of brackets for additional information. Okay, remember that, and there was that third way to enter a parenthesis, the hyphens, the dashes. Colons, they introduce a list. Commas within the list, unless each element of the list is a little bit longer, and then we can use semicolons to separate larger items in a list. Fronted adverbials, we can use those at the starts of sentences to introduce the time, the where, the when, or the order that things happened. Okay. More fronted adverbials. And then apostrophes to show when something is owned. And finally, making sure we write using formal, correct language. Don't make it too chatty. Don't make it informal. Okay. As I say, this is someone's life we're reflecting on, so we should be respectful and write correctly with good English. Okay. So there's your toolkit. Over the next few days and weeks, we will put that to good use. Okay, but let's have a look at today's task. Today's task is a short write. It's our 5-sentence story. So a reminder, because I think some people are still getting a little bit confused with this from what I'm seeing on Tapestry. Your story should be just 5 sentences long. And the 5 sentences should start with these 5 phrases at the bottom of the page. So your story should start once upon a time. The next sentence starts one day. That's followed by a sentence, unfortunately, luckily, and then the final sentence starts finally. Okay. And your story should be about a secret agent. There were rumors about Christopher Marlowe being a secret agent, being a spy for the government. So that's your 5-sentence story. A 5-sentence story about a spy, maybe a James Bond type character, or something completely different, but a secret agent, a spy. 5 sentences with those 5-sentence starters. Good luck with that. Okay, I look forward to reading those on Tapestry. But for now, that is the end of today's session. Take care of yourself, guys. Look after those around you. and I will see you very soon.